Hello guys, it's me Simo Orohara, and in this video I would like to talk about how Kubo changed Bleach anime in its new season, because Kubo is one of the few mangaka who show great interest in how the anime adapt their story. He loves the anime. In fact, Kubo sees himself as the first and the biggest fan of Bleach the anime, because there are many mangaka who doesn't care about their story in the anime and their only concern is the story in manga. Therefore, we see some works that have been completely distorted, and this was with the approval of the mangaka. Many other stories in the anime, the mangaka usually doesn't have much input into how it is turned into anime. Rather, this matter may be limited only to giving approval for the adaptation and nothing else. But for Kubo, it's a whole different story. Just read his reaction when he heard Bleach was getting an anime adaptation for the first time. And when the first episode came out, he burned the anime opening into a CD and watched it every night before sleeping. It is true that Kubo, especially at the beginning of the anime, had some concerns about how the story proceed, and this, as I said, underscores Kubo's strong interest in his story and how it should be handled in the anime. And based on these considerations, he began reviewing the scripts for the episodes. However, we must consider that at that time, Kubo was still drawing manga weekly. Despite his time being dedicated to the manga, his attention was also on the anime. More than that, his attention wasn't only to the manga episodes, but also for the filler arcs. As you can read here, Kubo was reviewing the script of the Amagai Captain filler arc. He made the designs of some of its characters, and the episodes of the Minus Forest was supervised by Kubo. He is the one who gave them all the details they wanted. And he did the same thing with the Zanpakuto arc. However, the only arc filler that Kubo didn't touch was the Bound arc. But in 2012, it was a gloomy year for all Bleach fans. The announcement of the anime's end came as a shock to everyone, including myself. I was one of many who couldn't stand the idea that the anime is gone, especially since Kubo had just started the final arc. So it was challenging for us as viewers, as fans, to come to terms with the fact that our weekly routine would no longer involve watching an episode of Bleach every Tuesday. Especially at the time, we have seen the improvement in the animation quality, especially in the Fullbring arc, and undoubtedly Kubo too must have felt a sense of sadness towards the anime, despite some initial flaws in the third season. But the first season remains a crucial part of Bleach's identity, having been with it for 8 years. Thus, with the end of the third season, a period in the history of Bleach ended, and we entered into years that I might say were dark years. Between the end of the anime, the poor ranking of Bleach in the magazine, some decrease in sales of volumes, especially without the presence of an anime that can support it. And also, and this is the most important, Kubo's health had begun to deteriorate, all of which greatly affected the course of the manga and caused it to hasten its end. Kubo mentioned that in those years when there was no anime, he came to believe that the Quincy arc would never be turned into an anime. And I think Kubo's feeling was shared by many fans, especially after the end of the manga in 2016. But despite all the bad luck that befell Bleach and Kubo casting a shadow over the future and making it seem like everything was lost, the phoenix of Bleach rose from the ashes, and it announced the return of the Bleach anime, along with other projects related to Burn the Witch, and 1 year after we have seen the one-shot of Hell arc. All this happened within a few years after we lived through 10 years of drought. And personally, I was certain of one thing, which is that if the anime returned, Kubo would get involved in it and give everything he had for the success of the anime, especially in terms of the additions that manga readers were anticipating. As I said, it was possible for Kubo to give just the studio his approval and adapt the arc as it is, and things would be over. However, this is Kubo, not someone else. When he was drawing the chapters of the Quincy arc, he no longer thought about the possibility that the anime might censorship the battle scenes he was drawing. Kubo said that when the third season was going on, he was drawing the manga and in his mind the anime guidelines. So he tried to draw scenes that wouldn't be heavily censored by the studio, because it's important to remember that the anime during the first season aired in the evening, and therefore Kubo kept these factors in his mind while drawing the manga. But once the anime ended, Kubo's thirst for blood increased. Evident in the arc's battles, we saw this through intense scenes like Sakibi's death, Yhwach's first appearance and his ruthless elimination of his Arrancar followers, as well as Kira's injury and Yamamoto's tragic end, and more that we can't count in this video. Therefore, all these factors indicated that the anime should be aired at the midnight to adapt the arc without any issues. And this was the first thing that Kubo made sure to do in order to avoid the mistakes of the first season in this regard. Many scenes were changed in the anime in the first season, and this was the first thing that Kubo made sure to do in order to avoid the mistakes of the first season in this regard. However, Kubo's most significant collaboration with the studio was in determining how to portray the arc story in the anime. With the recent news that we got from the Blu-ray booklet, I can say that I gained now an insight into how Kubo is working with the studio. It can be said that Kubo is no longer a mangaka helping the anime and giving them advice here and there on how the story will be adapted in the anime, but rather he became a member of the anime team. The anime team in general, whether those in charge of scripting or directing or making the storyboard, have an idea that the Quincy arc needs additions. Not small additions, but rather large and major and essential additions in several places in the story. And this matter is not new, we all know it, and Kubo also knows it. Indeed, as he stated at the beginning of the anime's production, he said that he had several battles and ideas that he wanted to include in the manga, but he was unable to do so. And so adopting the same vision from both parties, this facilitated their collaboration. For example, Kubo wanted to include Yuri more in the manga, but he wasn't able to. So he expressed this matter to the anime team, and thus they worked on re-including his role in a larger way. And this is what we saw at the beginning of the first part through those new scenes involving him and Ryuken in his discovery of his grandfather book. Another thing that Kubo intended to do was to train Ichigo with Ichibi. I talked about this matter in one of my last videos, and so which resulted in scenes of Ichigo training with the monk in the second part. On the other hand, there are additions from the anime staff, from the anime team. These ideas or additions emerged from their reading of the story and their attempt to enrich it with additional scenes in order to clarify some things, like Aizen and Yhwach's conversation in the Muken. This conversation was included at the request of the director, Taguchi, who wanted to know what happened, like us the fans. So Kubo wrote that scene for them. And that's the good thing about it, meaning the studio is not the one who comes up with these things, with these dialogues or anything of their own. Rather, they ask for things from Kubo that the fans would have also asked as well, like what happened between Aizen and Yhwach, as I said. And the same goes from the original Goche 13. The studio wanted to know some designs of them, so Kubo introduced all the characters and their names. The same thing was done in the Battle of Squad Zero and the 8 Guards. As Kubo said, the anime team was planning for one of the Zero Squad members to release the Bankai, and they chose Shinjimaru. Kubo agreed with them and made storyboards for Shinjimaru's Bankai. Also, the idea of Squad Zero killing themselves is an idea from the studio, but it was also done with Kubo's approval. So I can say that this consistency in work between Kubo and the studio appears in these details. And this matter wouldn't have been successful if Kubo, for example, was busy with a new manga or a new project. So that's it for this video, guys. Tell me other things that you see Kubo help the studio in, write them in the comments, and see you guys in my next video.